A grizzly bear attack. A man left broken and bleeding in the wilderness. Everyone expected a tragedy. But what unfolded next shocked everyone. In the face of terror, a bond was forged that defied instinct, survival, and even fear itself. This isn't just a story about survival. It's about second chances, redemption, and an unforgettable connection between two souls. Get ready, this story will challenge everything you believe about fear, forgiveness, and the wild heart of nature. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. It helps us bring you more powerful and emotional stories like this one. The first mistake was leaving the trail. Michael Hayes had been hiking the Bitterroot Mountains for years. He knew the risks, knew the rules: stay on marked paths, make noise, carry bear spray. But that morning, the sky had been so clear, the valley so breathtakingly quiet, that he let his guard slip. A shortcut, he told himself, a little off-trail exploring before noon. It didn't feel dangerous until it was. The dense forest closed around him, ancient and shadowed. The air smelled of wet pine and cold earth. Birds fell silent. Michael slowed his steps, senses prickling with unease. That's when he saw her, a massive grizzly bear, golden brown and towering, less than 30 feet away. At her feet, two tiny cubs. Michael froze, heart slamming into his ribs. Every instinct screamed the same truth: too close, too late. The grizzly reared onto her hind legs, a low, guttural roar tearing through the silence. Michael raised his arms, speaking low, trying to back away. It didn't matter. She charged. The impact was like being hit by a freight train. Michael went down hard, the world spinning, the air knocked from his lungs. He didn't feel the first swipe. He barely registered the second, claws tearing through jacket, skin, muscle. He lay sprawled on the forest floor, bleeding, gasping, tasting dirt and iron. And then, silence. Through the haze of pain, he saw her looming over him, breath heaving, eyes wild with fury and fear. Michael closed his eyes, waiting for the killing blow. But it didn't come. Instead, he felt the bear's hot breath on his face, smelled the deep primal scent of her fur, and then, unbelievably, she stepped back. Watched him. Almost assessing. Michael forced his eyes open, locked gazes with the creature who had every right to end him. Something passed between them then, a moment raw and terrible and impossibly profound. A recognition. A choice. And then, with a grunt, the grizzly turned. She herded her cubs back into the trees, vanishing like a ghost. Michael lay trembling, bleeding into the earth, the pain crashing down on him like a tidal wave. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. And he knew, deep in his bones, that he hadn't been spared by luck. He had been spared by mercy. The kind of mercy no one would believe. The kind that would change his life forever. By morning, Michael was barely conscious. His body was shutting down, every breath shallow and ragged. The pain had dulled into something distant, almost dreamlike. But the cold was a different kind of predator. It gnawed at him, creeping through the torn fabric of his jacket, stealing feeling from his fingers and toes. Part of him wanted to lie back, close his eyes, and let it happen. It would be easy. Peaceful, even. But somewhere inside, somewhere stubborn and battered, the memory of the bear's eyes still burned. She had spared him. She had given him a second chance. He couldn't waste it. With a groan that sounded more animal than human, Michael forced himself upright. He leaned heavily on a branch he found nearby, using it like a crutch. One step. Another. The forest was endless. Hours blurred into a haze of snow, bark, and pain. Sometimes he thought he heard voices, Anna's voice calling him home. Sometimes he thought he saw flashes of movement in the trees. But there was no one, only the wilderness. Then, just when he was sure he would collapse for the last time, he saw it, a scar in the earth, a worn path, narrow but unmistakably human-made, cutting through the trees. A trail. Relief hit him so hard it nearly dropped him to his knees. With trembling hands, he fumbled a scrap of bright cloth from his ruined pack, a tattered red bandana. He tied it to a nearby branch, high enough to catch the eye. If someone came through here, if by some miracle another hiker passed, they might see it, might find him. It wasn't much, but it was something. Michael slumped down beside a fallen log, wrapping his arms around himself, breathing in short, painful gasps. He needed to conserve energy. Help might come. It had to. As he lay there, watching the treetops sway against the gray sky, his mind wandered to Anna's laughter, to the first time he had stood at an altar, heart hammering, swearing he would protect her always, to the smell of coffee in the morning, to the small stupid things he had taken for granted every day of his life. And for the first time since the attack, Michael didn't feel anger. He didn't feel fear. He felt gratitude for a life so rich and full that even now, clinging to the edge of it, he could still remember it with joy. He didn't know if he would live to see another sunrise, but he knew, without a doubt, that he was not the same man who had walked into these woods. He was something smaller, something humbler, something fiercely, desperately alive. And whatever time he had left, he would spend it not in regret but in honor of the mercy he had been shown, whether by fate, by nature, or by the wild, battered soul of a mother bear protecting her cubs and somehow sparing him too. The hours after Michael found the trail blurred into a haze of cold and pain. His body was beyond exhaustion. His wounds throbbed with a dull, persistent ache that spoke of infection setting in. His mouth was dry as paper, his stomach hollow with hunger. But he stayed conscious, barely. The survival instincts that had kept him alive through the night now whispered crueler truths. Help might not come. He was alone. And every hour that passed, the odds grew smaller. Twilight fell again, bleeding orange and purple across the sky. Michael tried to sit up but collapsed against the frozen ground. His body shivered uncontrollably. He tucked his broken arm tighter against his chest, teeth chattering. Is this it? He wondered. Is this where it ends, alone, cold, a red bandana fluttering uselessly in the wind? The thought scared him less than he expected. But then he thought of Anna. Not her face at the wedding, glowing and smiling, not even her laughter over morning coffee. He thought of her sitting by a hospital bed once, years ago, when his brother had been dying. He remembered her hands, small and strong, never letting go. He remembered the way she had fought for life. Even when hope seemed ridiculous, she wouldn't give up, and neither could he. Gritting his teeth against a wave of agony, Michael dug into the side pocket of his tattered backpack. His fingers found the emergency whistle he had carried, a tiny plastic thing he had never once expected to use. He raised it to his cracked lips and blew. A shrill, desperate note pierced the silent woods. He waited. Blew again, nothing. He blew until his vision swam, until his chest ached, until the sound seemed to mock him. A tiny, pitiful cry against the vast indifference of the forest. And still, he didn't stop, because somewhere out there, someone might hear. And because he could hear something now, deep inside himself, something that refused to die. Not here. Not like this. Every whistle blast was a rebellion, a battle cry. I am still here. I am still fighting. The stars came out, cold and sharp, above the trees. Michael lay back against the earth, clutching the whistle in his bloody hand like a talisman. He didn't know if anyone would come, but he had done all he could. He had fought longer and harder than anyone could have expected. And somewhere between the shallow breaths and the icy dark, he made peace with whatever came next. He was not afraid anymore. If death found him, it would find him standing his ground, alive in every way that mattered. Michael drifted in and out of consciousness, his battered body trembling against the frozen earth. Dreams and reality blurred together, visions of Anna, of warm kitchens and crackling fires, of the heavy footfalls of something huge moving through the trees. For a moment, he thought he heard the Grizzly again, the great she-bear, come back to finish what she had started. But when he opened his eyes, he saw only the endless stars and the silence. Always the silence, until it wasn't silent anymore. A faint sound cut through the cold night air, faint but real, boots crunching snow, voices. Michael tried to call out, but his throat was raw, his lips cracked and frozen. All he could do was clutch the whistle, still tangled in his hand, and raise it to his mouth one last time. A breath. A shrill, desperate blast. This time, the voices stopped. Then they shouted words he couldn't quite understand, but they were closer now, unmistakably human. Michael tried to sit up but collapsed back, the world tilting. Flashlights sliced through the trees, beams of harsh white light cutting the darkness. Figures emerged, 2 men in bright orange parkas, moving fast, calling out, "There! I see something." Strong hands gripped him carefully, urgently checking his pulse, peeling back the shredded layers of his jacket. "He's alive," one voice said, breathless with shock. "Jesus, he's alive." Michael felt himself being lifted, cradled like a child. Warmth surrounded him, a blanket, rough but welcome. He tried to speak, to thank them, to explain about the bear, about the mercy he had been shown. But the words tangled in his throat. He managed only one sound, a broken sob that cracked through his body and left him trembling. "It's okay," the man carrying him murmured. "We've got you now. You're safe. Safe." The word didn't feel real. The word didn't feel possible. But as they loaded him onto a stretcher, wrapping heat packs around his limbs, speaking into radios with clipped urgency, Michael realized he had made it. Against every odd, against every instinct of survival and reason, he was going. Rescue team worked. One of them knelt beside him, pressing a bottle of water to his lips. "How the hell did you survive out here alone?" the rescuer asked, shaking his head in wonder. Michael managed a weak, broken smile. "I wasn't alone," he whispered. The man frowned, glancing around at the empty woods. But Michael just closed his eyes, letting the warmth soak into his frozen bones, feeling the unbearable sweetness of life flooding back. He didn't need them to understand. He barely understood it himself. All he knew was that somewhere out there, under the same stars, walked a creature who had chosen, for reasons he would never fully grasp, to show mercy to a creature far weaker than herself. And that mercy had changed everything. The hospital room was quiet, filled with the soft beeping of machines and the faint scent of antiseptic. Michael lay still, wrapped in layers of bandages, for lines trailing from his arms. His body was stitched, braced, and bruised beyond recognition. But he was alive. Alive. The doctors called it a miracle. The rescuers called it impossible. Michael called it something else entirely, a debt. Every breath he took now felt borrowed, a gift given by something wild, something no human hand could control or explain. Hannah sat by his bedside, fingers laced with his, her eyes rimmed red with sleepless worry but still alight with a fierce, stubborn love. "You scared the hell out of me," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "I scared myself," Michael rasped, managing a weak smile. Over the days that followed, the story unraveled in pieces, the attack, the wounds, the impossible choice the bear had made. Some believed him, some didn't. But Michael didn't care. The experience wasn't something he needed to defend. It was something he needed to honor. He vowed it to himself, lying awake at night, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. He would not waste this second chance. Not 1 second. When he was strong enough to walk again, leaning heavily on a cane, his ribs still aching with every breath, Michael made his way outside. The spring air was sharp, carrying the scent of new grass and distant rain. He closed his eyes and let the wind wash over him, remembering the way the forest had smelled just before the attack, clean, wild, alive. He wasn't angry at the bear. He wasn't even afraid. In some strange, painful way, he was grateful. The bear had reminded him, with teeth, claw, and mercy, what it meant to be alive. Every moment was a choice. Every heartbeat was a battle already won. Michael spent long hours in rehab, pushing through pain, regaining strength inch by inch. His body bore scars he would carry forever. But it also carried a story deeper than the wounds. A story of forgiveness, of wild, unexplainable grace. Months later, when he could walk without a limp, he returned to the Bitterroot Mountains. Not to conquer them, not to challenge fate, but to say thank you. He hiked carefully, respectfully, carrying only what he needed. No shortcuts this time, no reckless chances. At a small clearing near a rushing river, not far from where it had all happened, he built a small cairn of stones. No plaque, no words, just a quiet monument to survival, to mercy, to a life given back when it could have been taken without thought. Michael stood there for a long time, the wind tugging at his jacket, the sky vast and endless overhead. And for a moment, just a moment, he swore he felt something watching him from the trees, not with malice, not with hunger, but with something almost like recognition. He smiled, bowed his head, and turned back toward home, changed, scarred, alive, and carrying the wild, fierce kindness of the bear with him forever. Years passed. Seasons shifted across the Bitterroot Mountains, summers thick with wild flowers, winters heavy with snow. And through it all, Michael lived differently. Every morning he woke up, he treated it as a gift. Every breath he took, he treated as sacred. He and Anna moved to a small cabin closer to the foothills, trading city noise for the songs of birds and the whisper of trees. Michael gave talks at local ranger stations, sharing his experience not as a tale of horror but of reverence, a reminder of the brutal beauty of the wild and of the mercy that sometimes lives where we least expect it. People asked questions, hungry for details. Did he fear bears now? No, he told them, he respected them deeply. Did he hate what happened to him? Not for a second. Because that moment, that terrible, beautiful moment on the forest floor, had given him a clarity nothing else ever could. It had stripped away everything that didn't matter. And it had left behind only what did: love, connection, the fierce, stubborn will to cherish every breath. One autumn evening, as the sun bled orange across the sky, Michael and Anna sat together on their porch, sipping coffee, watching the mist curl through the trees. Far off, a shape moved at the edge of the woods, large, powerful. Michael stood slowly, heart thudding. It wasn't fear he felt. It was recognition. A grizzly, older now, her fur peppered with gray, stepped into the clearing for a moment. Her massive head lifted to catch the scent on the wind. She stood there, proud and wild, watching the cabin with eyes dark and ancient. For one long, breathless moment, time folded in on itself. Michael met her gaze across the distance. A silent acknowledgement passed between them. Not ownership, not apology, just understanding. Two survivors, two beings who had faced death and who had chosen, in their own ways, to show mercy. Then, with a slow turn of her head, the grizzly slipped back into the forest, swallowed once more by the trees and the fading light. Michael sat back down, his hands trembling slightly, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Was it her?" Anna asked quietly. He nodded. "I think it was." They sat in silence, watching the darkness settle over the land. Michael felt no need to chase after her, no need to seek another meeting. She had already given him all the gifts she had to give, his scars, his second chance, his life. And every day he lived it fully, fiercely, gratefully, was a tribute to that moment in the wild. A reminder that sometimes, when the world seems darkest, grace can come from the most unexpected places. Not from a gentle hand, not from a kind word, but from the teeth and claws of something that should have destroyed you and chose instead to let you live. And sometimes, that mercy doesn't just save your life. It gives you a reason to live it. If this story touched your heart, remember, sometimes the fiercest battles leave behind the greatest gifts. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this story with someone who believes in second chances and in the quiet miracles of life.